The film revolves around the image of a Chinese girl being arrested and imprisoned, but what makes the story thought-provoking is not the character-specific actions, but the way the power system operates around her. When viewed through the lens of U.S. law, viewers can clearly recognize the core conflict between individual rights and the interests that the state believes it must protect. In American legal thought, the state exists to serve and protect citizens' rights, not to stand above them. Therefore, any action that restricts individual freedom must cross a very high legal threshold. Arresting someone requires not only legal grounds but also proof of necessity and proportion. In the film, the girl is arrested quickly, with no indication that her individual rights are considered as a central factor. This creates a stark contrast to American legal standards. One of the most important principles of U.S. criminal law is the right not to be treated as an object of absolute power. A suspect is not obligated to prove their innocence. On the contrary, the burden of proof rests with the state. In the film, the girl is repeatedly placed in a position where she must explain and defend herself against vague accusations. In the context of U.S. law, this approach completely reverses the burden of proof and undermines the principle of due process. The film also reflects a strong emphasis on order and control. In some legal systems, maintaining social stability takes precedence over individual rights. U.S. law acknowledges the need to protect public order, but at the same time sets clear limits. The state cannot invoke the common good to arbitrarily deprive people of their rights. What happens to the girl in the film shows how power is exercised in an overwhelming way, where the collective good is used to justify individual sacrifice. When the story moves into the context of imprisonment, this conflict becomes more apparent. Under U.S. law, imprisonment is only intended to restrict freedom of movement, not to destroy human dignity or identity. The Third Amendment sets legal boundaries for the treatment of prisoners. In the film, the prison environment is highly assimilating and psychologically controlling, causing individuals to gradually lose their voice. From a U.S. legal perspective, this indicates that the punishment has exceeded its legitimate purpose. Another noteworthy element is the lack of a mechanism for public debate. In the U.S. legal system, state power is always in doubt and must prove its legitimacy before the courts, lawyers, and the public. In the film, the girl has no tools to challenge decisions that directly affect her fate. This silence tilts the balance of power heavily in favor of the state. On a deeper level, the film raises questions about the concept of justice. U.S. law views justice not only as the final outcome, but also as the process of achieving it. A decision may serve the public interest, but if it is formed through an unfair process, it is still considered a violation of the rule of law. When examining the girl's story based on this original work, viewers realize that the tragedy lies not only in her imprisonment, but in her lack of a genuine opportunity to be protected by the law. The film's ending leaves a heavy feeling, but at the same time opens up an important perspective. Under the lens of American law, this story serves as a reminder that the strength of a justice system lies not in its ability to suppress, but in its capacity to restrain its own power. Only when individual rights are respected can justice truly endure. Law. When examining this story through the lens of the U.S. constitutional system and case law, the focus of the analysis shifts from the outcome to how power was exercised throughout the process. In American law, the Constitution is not only the supreme legal document but also the moral boundary of the state. Any action restricting individual liberty must pass a double test: constitutionality and fairness. The film shows the girl's arrest occurring in the absence of clear intervention from an independent judicial body. Under American standards, this lack of oversight is not merely a procedural matter, but also a sign that power risks exceeding ethical limits. A key tenet of American legal ethics is the principle of self-restraint. The power to investigate and punish is granted to the government not to maximize power, but to protect society within the framework of the law. In the film, the girl is placed in a constant state of having to explain herself, thus making the burden of proving innocence a personal responsibility. This approach contrasts with the American norm, where the burden of proof rests entirely on the public. The film also raises the issue of consent in legal proceedings. U.S. law places particular emphasis on ensuring that all testimony and cooperation are voluntary. Famous Supreme Court precedents have repeatedly stressed that prolonged psychological pressure can also be considered a form of coercion. In the girl's story,